reason I'm actually starting off with this is because the person who does this plugin is Peter Wiggins from FCP.co. This is his plugin, and the reason he put it together is because he does broadcast work in the real world, and I think, and the reason I'm leading off with it is because I think it's the perfect definition of what a modern Final Cut 10 plugin should be, which is looking at a specific niche and figuring out what that niche does and delivering all of the tools around that niche that you need. I don't need 9 million different kinds of star white transitions. I don't need like all of these different things. I know Andy likes the star white, but but I don't need that many flavors of it. What I want is to be able to go into a plugin package for a particular need, for a particular thing that it's going to address for me. And I think Peter's new news graphics plugin from Industrial Revolution is a really good example of this. So for instance, like I'll just kind of play this back. He's got a host of basic standard things that you might use. For instance, this ticker. Like I wish this thing was here literally when I was going to be using this plugin, and basically because I actually had to mimic something that was in the broadcast world, and I actually needed a ticker, and it's surprisingly hard to put this thing together. And so basically what you do is you go in and you pick your font, adjust the size, etc., and it's going to start a ticker for you that's going to scroll across the screen at varying speeds. And it has a host of other things. For instance, if you need to do that news flash where you're going to basically do that flash, you can go in, and if your station has a logo, etc., it's just going to go pop in the logo. This particular thing, if you go in under XFX here, and all of these plugins are located in a couple different places, and this is actually something you guys should know, is that most people only go to the XFX or the various areas under the effects tab, but sometimes they're under the titles, which all of these are here. So if you go to XFX News Graphics, you have a bug, you have a top right locator, you have the ticker, you have the news tag, news story headline, all of these various things that you just need something to pop up. It's going to pop up. But the coolest thing, actually, because I had to mimic something recently in a project of mine, I needed this thing, and it was surprisingly hard to do. And it's this little shrink back thing. So you know how like the news anchor is going to be talking and you need it to sort of pop back? Like basically in his little simple animation, you're going to have a host basically talking, and then it's going to pop back. You put a razor blade on it and you put below whatever it needs, and you have the anchor sort of talking here, and they're going to talk to each other. Then you put a blade where that's going to end, and you just continue the clip out, and then it's going to pop back over, and the news person, and this is surprisingly hard to achieve without this plugin in an elegant way. And it takes a whole lot of keyframing, and if I'd had this, it would basically simplify it. And basically if you need something to quickly assemble that looks like, there's a disaster happening, that's all just basically with the right out of the box handling. And the bottom line is, if you're an editor who needs to mimic something that's in a broadcast environment very quickly, this is a very affordable set of plugins. And kind of what I'm going to be talking about today is some associated plugins that you might want to know about. They're going to help you depending on what it is that you're doing, getting from point A to point B. And the next one of those is, and by the way, if you want, this is available on, how many of you guys know what FX Factory is and all that? So this is up on FX Factory. If you don't know what FX Factory is, it's basically the suite that has pretty much every kind of plugin you'd ever imagine. It's the app store for plugins, basically, and you download it and you can pick them, and then it's going to install them basically in your system as you buy them. And you can try any of this stuff for free. And I highly recommend it if you guys haven't got in there. It's a really safe, secure, easy way to get plugins, and Nicholas is a really good guy. So the next place I'm going to start is, how many of you guys do color correction? All right, and how many of you guys are color correcting in Final Cut? How many of you guys are using Color Finale? How many of you guys know what Color Finale is? Okay, so basically a large majority. And how many of you guys are using Resolve? How many of you guys love the round trip between Final Cut 10 and Resolve?
It's surprisingly competent most of the time.
Most of the time, except when it's not. And this is really the issue. I think the biggest issue in today's, like, especially for simple projects that are not being worked on by a team of people, is how difficult it is to round trip, right? So, you know, my background is as a Final Cut 7 editor and colorist, and I used to go to Apple Color, and I sort of graduated to Resolve and all these other things. But the reality is that mostly what I wanted Resolve for was curves and power windows. So that's probably 85%, 90% of it. And the limiting thing in Final Cut 10 is the absence of curves in the color correction software. Otherwise, you know, the color board's largely functional for lift, gamma, gain, and all that stuff, and doing a basic correction, but it doesn't have curves. And if you guys don't know what color finale is, and you do know what curves are, even if you're in the Photoshop world, curves are a far more intuitive way to grade luminance on an image, and that's what color finale does. So basically, if you've been looking for a way to grade footage, essentially that's what color finale is, and it's just basically a filter you're going to drag on or double click on and bring it up, and it's got a really simple interface, and there's essentially four. So first off, if you guys missed your three-way color correction, that's right here. So we have balls and wheels, lift, gamma, gain, etc. And actually, let me move this away so that stuff is in place. And basically, you have all of the traditional, you know, lift, gamma, gain features. So we'll cool this shot down a little bit, and it works with mids, etc. and blacks. And actually, how many of you guys know how cool the scopes are in Final Cut? So the scopes are actually really, really nice in Final Cut. They're also, you can adjust the views pretty much in any way you'd ever want to. And they're actually, frankly, I think nicer than Resolves and more modifiable than Resolve scopes. So right now I just need the one, and I'm gonna bring down the lift a little bit. We'll bring the gain up a touch. But if you notice, there's still sort of something in the contrast doesn't feel that right, even though I'm basically hitting the blacks and the whites in what should theoretically be the correct instance. And that's sort of where curves come in. And that's what this button is here. So curves allow you to affect the luminance, red, green, and blue channels on a very targeted level. And a lot of people don't know how to use curves. Typically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple points in. And for the most part, I'm going to start mimicking the S-curve a little bit. And I'm going to adjust these points just to kind of get in there and make the contrast pop. Usually, most adjustments you make to a curve are going to be in this level here. It's going to help you tighten up the area of where skin tones are and the face in a very targeted way. So like, I can always tell when something's been graded with the color board because the skin tones are never, the contrast is never really correct on them. And that's because the skin tones fall in here, and it's the one range you can't actually affect with the color board. You can do the blacks, you can do the mids, and you can do the whites, which is 0, 50, and 100, but you can't do the 25 to 50 area, and that's where most of the skin tones fall, and it's why the contrast region isn't quite right, and it's why you kind of need curves in this workflow. And then from there, you can go and adjust, and probably, and if you notice, depending on how you want the scene to go, etc., I don't use the red, green, and blue curves as much as some colorists do. A lot of it depends on your workflow, but the key to all of this is I have my curves back. And so what does it mean that I have my curves back? It means that I can now stay inside Final Cut for probably 90 to 95% of my projects, which means I don't have to do the round trip workflow. I can stay right within my NLE. And the reason for that is because Final Cut has all kinds of this cool thing in the new version. How many of you guys know what the Save Effects preset button is? So the Save Effects preset button allows you to make combinations of effects that you use often and basically save them the way you might save a motion template. So for instance, I could take this little color finale plugin, and I could go and throw a color correction filter on top of it, and I could go and make actually, I can just go and make a secondary of this correction by going there, and I'm going to add a color mask. And I can go and use the eyedropper and go, and I'm going to take this little red area, and I'm only going to affect the red area, right? So it's kind of about there, and I can adjust the softness of that, etc. And now if I go into the color board, I'm only going to be affecting, I can go red, green, etc. And I'm trying to see what is the, and I can go inside or outside this area as needed. So now I'm affecting everything outside of the car I want to be, I want to subtract red from. And I can do this, and I can save this as a preset that I can reuse. So say I'm using this correction a lot. Say, you were doing the Schindler's List look where you wanted to take out color from everything except the red, for instance, so which I can actually do here. So why don't we just go ahead and subtract saturation from the outside of this area. And if I come back in, I can sort of modify this effect a little bit. And let's just try and, there we go. So now I've basically managed to pull out all of the color from all of these, from everything outside of this red area. And I wanted to save this preset. All I need to do is hit the Save Effects Preset button. And I'm going to call this Subtract Not Red. And I can save this in any category I want. And so for instance, I might save this in a new category. And we'll just call this Sam Looks. I click Save. And now when I come down to Sam Looks, there's my preset. I can go and I can pop this on, and actually let's just get into a different timeline here. We'll just go, So basically, I can go and apply this immediately, and I have both of my filters there. And I can do this. This will work with audio filters. This will work with pretty much any combination of filters where you can quickly apply these and basically get started, copy and paste these, using paste attributes to get them onto other parts of your sequence, easily apply this. And when you search with the timeline index, you can take this to a whole other level to quickly address which type of clips that you might want to use. And a perfect example of this would be if I was to go and drop a bunch of these clips into the timeline, and I can open up my timeline index here. It's been nice actually seeing some people use the timeline index because I think it's like the coolest thing that no one uses. And I'm just going to copy, and I'm just going to go across this timeline real quick just to demonstrate this, and paste, 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 right? So say I wanted to take this effect, and I'm going to copy this, Command-C to copy it, and now I know that I've just pasted MVI 6067. All I've got to do is go type in 6067, Command-A, Command-2, Shift-Command-V, paste effects, and now I have those effects on these clips. And you can do this in a targeted way, so if you don't even know where your clips are, all you need to know is what the clip is called. In fact, an easier way to do this, if you want to be more precise, is just push Enter, Command-C, Command-F, Command-V, Command-2, oh wait, oh, oops, I screwed up. But if we go here, Command-A, and then Command-2, and then you would paste attributes. So all of this can basically be done, and it's just a few keystrokes where you can basically go copy, paste attributes, and this is all metadata. It's all basically pasting these things. And if you're using paste, basically you would never think to work this way because this is a fairly new feature that most people aren't using yet, but you can start doing things extremely quickly using the timeline index. And additionally, another thing that people talk about is I wish I could track things or track color corrections or things along those lines. And one thing actually, if you own so you can do this with, how many of you guys know what SliceX is? Okay, we got a bunch of hands. SliceX is probably the coolest plugin in Final Cut 10. It allows you to track areas. There's a bunch of different uses for it. And how many of you guys are familiar with the tracker in Resolve? And we got a host of people there. So basically, what a lot of people don't know is that if you own Color Finale and you own SliceX, there is this little button here called SliceX, which is Color Finale with a shape mask on it, which basically gives you power window functionality right in Final Cut 10 that you can track, which is what a lot of people are missing for particular instances. So, for instance, something that you could do, and let me actually find a good clip for this, is I could track my friend Chad's head here. And essentially, I've already done this, but I'm going to delete it. And I'll just show you how this might work, is I'm going to go and paste on the Color Finale with SliceX thing and plugin. And I'm going to just track his head through this generally unsteady shot. And I'm just going to select this in here, and we're going to get fairly close around his face. And just to demonstrate what this sort of looks like, I just open up the Color Finale controls here, and I'm just going to add something just so you can see this happen, which will be just so you see the red. And you know, we'll blur this out a little bit. And there we go. And now, so you can see his face is red and what this happens. And the way that this works, right, in Final Cut 10, is I'm just going to hit the track forward button. And if you notice, this is going to adjust with his face and track across the shot. And this is a fairly unsteady shot. This is a very powerful tracker that's built right into Final Cut 10. And just think about the amount of time I just saved versus having to get into Resolve and conforming for all of this and all of these things. If I'm using curves and I'm doing all of these things directly in Final Cut 10, and I'm building, if you look at the Save Effects preset as your new sort of node layers, then like there's just a million things you can literally start doing. So for instance, if I went to this clip, and I went under video, and there's no effects on here yet. So one thing, for instance, if I didn't know, and I didn't have a standard correction that I wanted to show, I could go here, and what I built is my own little template that I use for video, which is a color correction, which I'm going to put my primary correction on. And then I have Color Finale, where I'm going to add curves and work with the balls and wheels if I need to. And then I'm going to add an additional correction, which already has a color mask or a secondary correction if I need it there. And it's going to also, as the last layer, have a shape mask attached where I can go and put a vignette or something. And I can largely mimic my process that I would typically have in Resolve directly in Final Cut 10 using the standard controls. So depending on how you look at it, there's a million different things you can do directly in Final Cut just using some of these tools. And you know, the key concept to really think about here is the idea of what you need to do and what is the best way to assemble your workflow so that you can do it. And basically, a lot of people have talked about sound turnover with X2 Pro. The single biggest thing you can do to make X2 Pro work for you is to ask whoever's recording your sound to do two things. Record with timecode, so you can use sync and link. And if you're not going to record with timecode, where's Charlie Austin? Is he still here?
No, but he said goodbye.
Oh. So I'm going to plug his software, which is Roll-O-Matic, where you can assign roles to components, either through sync and link or through Final Cut 10, or not through either sync and link or Roll-O-Matic. And basically what it's going to allow you to do is, I shot a pilot recently, a couple weeks ago, and we used sync and link, second source timecode, and I asked my sound recorder to basically figure out who was talking and name their microphone after them and put that into the audio metadata. So that when it comes into Final Cut and I use sync and link or Roll-O-Matic if I'm not doing second source audio or second source timecode, basically what it means is that when I go to my Rolls tab, upon import, all of the components here are going to get their own audio component name, and I don't have to do any work whatsoever. So what does that mean? It means when I go upon import, this happens immediately upon import, every piece of audio that comes in is going to export to Logic or Pro Tools or wherever I need it to go using Extra Pro based on a tagged subrole. So it's going to automatically get placed on its own track. How many of you guys are used to making OMFs? Some. And how many people get a little confused with the AAF thing and the subroles and all that stuff? Basically, this is a set it and forget it way to make sure that your sound designer sees the channels as they were recorded based on the character. So basically, you're doing their work for them, so you can get a perfectly prepped AAF to come into Logic or Pro Tools. If you're going to do that, I don't recommend you use the Logic XML. I recommend you use basically Extra Pro and deliver the AAF that way. It's going to be far more accurate, and you can specify your roles, etc. A lot of people have talked about it. I could show it, but instead I think what I'm going to show is the last thing, which is something that's brand new. And it's actually something I've been working on for a little while. How many of you guys work with a control surface already? We got a couple hands. Do you guys use the Wave, the Element, the Euphonics, DaVinci Resolve control surface? Element? Okay. So if you use the tangent element, you're going to really like this. If you use anything else, this may not be as applicable. However, I'm working on stuff where this is going to work on the Wave relatively soon. But basically, a while back, Tangent has this thing where you can map commands to specific things on a control surface on an application-sensitive basis. And so way back when I did this thing where I just wanted to use it, I had an element which I used for resolve, which is how most people use these, is for color correction. But like, why don't people do these for editing? And mostly I think it's because no one ever bothered to do it. So I had this thing sitting there. I'm like, well, I want to stay more and more in Final Cut. Is there a way for me to do this? And I ran into Chris Rose from Tangent, and he's like, yeah, it's really easy. You just map the keys to the buttons. So I did that, and it got released, and I think it was like semi-functional, but the big problem was that you couldn't map the rings, balls, and knobs to it. So it was really just like you were adding buttons. But it wasn't totally functional until a few months ago when they added support for you to map to the balls, rings, knobs, etc. And so that now you had a fully functioning control surface. And so what happens when you actually start editing with a control surface? Basically, how many of you guys ever edited on a flatbed? 4. Okay. That's how I started way back when in film school. And actually, I kind of loved it, where it was like, it felt like you were actually, you know, in it. Like you could get lost in the edit because you were using gestures and you were able to touch and sort of manipulate things with your actual hands. And so basically, I guess to demonstrate this is I'm just going to get rid of the keyboard for the rest of this demo. I'll unplug it and we'll just put it over here. And I'm going to show you kind of what this might actually look like. Actually, I can't do that. I need the mouse. I hadn't actually tried this yet. We'll see how far I can actually get doing this, because I haven't actually tried to do this. I still keep a keyboard when I do this, but it's mostly to prove a point, which is like, I think it's far more intuitive if you can do this right and actually go and so now I'm going to turn this on. You guys are more than welcome to come up after and sort of see how this actually looks, but I'll be walking you through what I'm doing. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Zoom Fit to get this, and actually it's already there. And we'll close this out. We'll give ourselves a little screen real estate here and just close out this filter. And so now I have a knob that allows me to move between the timeline, if you can see it update down there, or the browser. I'm just using a knob to get back and forth between the two. And I have the tab key mapped so that I can move up to where the waveform is or over to where the event is. And then I have up and down mapped where I can move event to event And now I'm going to tab in, then I'm going to tab in again, and now I'm moving between my clips, and I can go up or down, clip to clip. I can play, I can reverse, but also I can shift select. So I'm going to select these 4 clips, and then if I come over here, I've mapped the editing functions to some of the knobs. So I can go ahead and append these directly into the timeline. And actually, hold on. Oh, whoops. Oh, actually, I don't want to be in this timeline though. So we're going to get into this timeline. And if we come in over here, okay. Because I think that other timeline was not designed for this. So if we go, we'll just shift select down here. All right, and then boom. And now we have 4 clips that are appended into the timeline, right? So now what would I do? I'm going to zoom fit to fit this in here. We'll go back a couple clips. Now I'm going to zoom in with a knob. And I'm going to select the right audio edge of 18A-5. And now I'm going to go to another knob, and I'm going to start nudging with the knob, frame by frame. And maybe I'm going to zoom in to dial this in. And now I can nudge many frames. Or if I really zoom in, I can go and nudge at the subframe level. And I can zoom out, and this is all happening, and it's kind of an organic process, right? And additionally, if I go and I can do this with my mouse. So I can determine, okay, I want the audio to end here. I hit the B key here, and that's going to hit the extend edit back, right? And then I come back, I can select this clip, and I can nudge the video back, and I just do the right edge there, and now I can nudge the video back this way. I can also trim it with the trim start key. If I zoom out, I can go into the edit mode, switch over, and I could quickly just blade the clip here if I wanted. Or I can go and select my range key, drag across this area, and trim to the selection. I can also clear this selection by moving this ring that way. Or I can select a clip this way, just using the ring, and I can quickly delete it with the swipe. And basically, and if I go upwards on this ball, oh whoops, or downwards, I can undo that. But then I can redo it if I go up. And so basically, I don't really need the keyboard anymore. And there's a variety of modes. So let's go and we'll just jump into the marker mode. So now I'm going to add a marker here. I'm going to add a marker here. I'll add a marker here. And I'll add a to-do marker here. I'll add a chapter marker here. And I'll modify that marker. Or actually, let's go and I'm going to jump to the previous marker. And let's go and modify the marker. I'm going to change that to a to-do marker, and now it's red. And I can also immediately, if I wanted to just edit the previous marker, well, I just hit the edit previous marker button. And so all of basically your, there's 9 different modes. There's a prep mode. So if I come up to prep, I'm going to go and move this knob to get back into the timeline. I can quickly create a new event. I can create a new project, do a new keyword collection, even a new library, smart collection. I can switch over to list view, or so I can get to list view, get over to film strip view. Basically anything I would actually need to do, if I can go, I can set an in point here, set an out point, and favorite. The bottom line is all of these things can be done immediately without having to memorize all of these commands. All of these are completely viewable. And what this allows you to do is sort of get lost in your edit a little bit more, because you are now gesture-based. You're actually directly interacting and affecting your video footage. And I think it's, I guess it's like going from like this like interface where you're typing and you're remembering all of these things to maybe a little bit more of a musical instrument that you can sort of start manipulating. And I would love to see with all of the, I think the trackpad and all of these other things are perfect illustrations of this, and I'd love to see editing move towards a little bit back to where the original, film world was, where you're actively manipulating things. And it's just a far more, I think, intuitive way to sort of go about the actual act of editing. I mean, for instance, if I'm in sound mode, I want to only see the waveforms, so I can manipulate a dial for that. But if I just want to see the pictures, I can go and just see the thumbnail. And a lot of it just depends on how you want to be working and what you want to do. And then there's even as you're dialed in on the sound process, I can come in and just select a clip and then immediately adjust the volume of the waveform. And I feel like this is sort of a much smoother way to edit. So right now it's only available on the Element. I'm working on it for the Wave, but it's something that's sort of brand new, and it's something you can only do in Final Cut 10. Technology is moving so quickly where I think we've gone out in this place for an extremely complicated, we've made things extremely complicated with all of these codecs, et cetera, and we have all of these tools. But I think the truth of the matter is, I think we all want this process to get a little bit simpler and a little bit more integrated. And I think a good way to do that is really thinking about, all right, well, what is the actual process we want? And do we want this process living back in the physical world a little bit more? And for me, I know I do, which is why I sort of went out and developed this, and because I want to be able to interact with my footage in a way that is, I guess it feels a little bit more substantial, and I can manipulate something with a type of control as opposed to a keyboard command where I've got to push the thing over and over. Sometimes I'd rather just have a knob. And so anyway, that's the new thing I've sort of been working on. For the last couple minutes though, how many of you guys know what Lumberjack is? Okay, well, how many of you guys saw the OJ case study on FCP.co? So the bottom line is this is a workflow that's starting to come out in the real world, and people are taking it and doing things that have literally just never been done in terms of workflow, in terms of being able to find certain things and access media quickly. So to close the show today, Mr. Philip Hodgetts is back there, and he's going to give you a walkthrough on what is hands down the best tool for unscripted workflow, Lumberjack.
One thing I'd like to see, because for me, the thing that there's so many variables on with 10 is keywording. How people are utilizing keywords in different environments, like in a documentary, in a feature, in a corporate piece. How are other people applying keywords and finding effective ways to use them?
For me, my point of view is I want fewer keywords for narrative specifically. I want to limit the way I'm searching for things because I don't want too many things on the screen. However, if you're doing something like what Patrick just did on the OJ documentary and you're searching based on documentary lines of dialogue, you want as many as possible so that your search is going to bring up all the different instances. And Philip's going to show you exactly why you might want 1 million right now.
Actually, no, it's a really good question, because I've gone down that whole path from having too many keywords to too few keywords to trying to find the middle ground. So yeah, there is definitely an optimal amount of keywords that you can have. If you've got keywords applied and you've only got 1 or 2 clips with that keyword, it's not very important. Probably you could do without that keyword.
And no, that question wasn't a plant, even though it is the absolute perfect segue to the end here. So this is Mr. Philip Hodgetts. He has this amazing tool called Lumberjack, and he's going to close the show.
And sorry guys, I'm going to be hiding behind this monitor, but so yeah, I'd just like to start by showing you a little bit of what I've been doing with a family history project. And these are 12 interviews that I did while I was in Australia back in April. And wouldn't you like to start your edit like this? So everything already organized by keyword collection. I can do things once I've got organized like this, properly keyworded. I can do things like say, well, show me only my immediate family, the Hodgetts group of my extended family. And now I've only got the clips that apply to those, but I can say, oh, but also show me only the answers to question 22. Apparently, when I've only got the wrong question selected, we can't do that. So they're the only answers from my family to answer 22. So you can use these filters to very quickly find exactly the part that you want when you've got appropriate keywording. Now in this case I was asking the same 38 questions of every member of my family, and I intend to keep going back and doing that for the next 30 years, and that should be quite interesting. I think you'd agree this is a great way to start your edit, being this organized. So how would you get this organized if you didn't have Lumberjack? You would spend days listening to those edits, those shoots, dragging out the keyword ranges across your multicam clips, and really taking 2 or 3 days. Instead, let me show you how I did it. While I was interviewing my family, I was the cameraman, the audio guy, the producer, interviewer, and the whole lot. I did everything. All I would need to do is, this is the iOS version of the Lumberjack logging interface. It runs on the phone. There is a web browser version of it as well, and there will shortly be an OS X version of the logging tool as well that will be quite enhanced. But all I have to do is, David, tell me about your earliest memory. And he takes a moment to think about it, and he starts talking about it. In fact, what I did is I set myself to go back 5 seconds so that I'm working behind, because when you're real-time logging, you don't know what's happening until it's happened. So, yeah, it's a problem, I know. So we can go back to log stuff that happened up to 90 seconds in the past. So you can say, should you realize that, oh no, there's been a sidetrack on here, but it should be noted, you can say, well, I'll quickly add a new keyword, because I can just click on this button anytime to add a new keyword, and then I can say, well, that needs to be logged from 15 seconds ago when it really started. So I don't have this pressure on me as a real-time logger. So what I would do is I would say, tell me about your earliest memory. Then I'd wait for them to start and go 1, 2, 3, start logging. So now I've got a blue keyword there. I'm in a keyword range. Because what I'm doing is I'm creating keyword ranges in Final Cut for Final Cut Pro 10, but I'm creating them in time, and later on we're going to marry them with the media. So all I have to do at the end of that question, when they finish answering, is turn it back off again. You know, that takes so little additional attention that I could still spend most of my time engaging with my family and giving them that sort of positive feedback as a listener that you want to give them. It's not like I have to be, oh yes, look here. You know, we log everything. Our cooking show, we log the cooking show as we're cooking. We do Lunch with Philip and Greg. You can check that out at lunchwithphilipandgreg.com. We log each of those lunches. Not because I need that for the short term, here's the cut down of the lunch to a piece, but at the end of the year, for no extra work, I want to be able to go and say, I'd like to pull out all of the answers to the technology that most has changed during your career. Or I want to pull out all of the information about how you think things will change in the future. These are questions that I typically ask over our lunch interviews. It's all this metadata is useful to give us a head start. And if that's all we did, you know, if we just logged it, that would be great, because, you know, once I do that, that's how I get to this result in here, where I have, as I showed you, you know, all the, Little trap is that it continues to filter even when the filtering display is not there, and I get caught with that more than you would hope. Not only do we do these keyword collections based on all the keywords you created, but we also have this strange display bug that just started a few weeks back. Oh, it's gone. But we create this string out, because once you have all of the answers, so here are all of my selects based on the answer of, you know, what role has music played in your family. If I was an editor and started to build that segment, what would I do? I'd put them all into a timeline. Computers are good at dumb things like that. So here's the answer to all of the answers to the question on what was your home like as a teenager. And you'll notice that at the first time somebody appears on camera, we use the lower third information, because back in here, we've logged the person. And so we've got the metadata, we might as well use it, because that's what metadata is for. It's to be used. It's not to collect for some wonderful esoteric function. It's to make life easier and make life work more smoothly, to give you a better head start, to take the dull work out of working, so that you have more time to be creative. Now, that's the only reason we make tools that take some of the dull work out of production. It's so you have more time for the work that you're actually being paid for, and that is being creative. Nobody really wants to pay you to organize, to log, to do all of that, because these are important steps to get to the point where you can really be creative. And that's what Lumberjack is about doing. One other thing I'd like to show you before I take any questions, but is that for the O.J. Simpson documentaries, for Patrick in particular, we added the feature of being able to take a time-stamped transcript and bring that into Final Cut Pro 10. And we've done that, and now we have transcripts based on all of the transcript pieces. You can see here where we put the keyword range becomes the name of the person speaking, and the text of the transcript that goes with that goes into the text field. And again, you can use all of those filtering functions to find the clips where particular words or particular phrases were mentioned. So you can take pretty much any format, time-stamped transcript in any text format, doc, docx, txt, rtf, pretty much every format that you can. I don't know that we support WordPerfect, but we may not be able to go back that far. And almost any format, timestamps and names. It's an amazing little algorithm that works out what actually is a timestamp in a file, because it can have colons, periods, it can have seconds and frames, it can have seconds and milliseconds. It depends on how the transcript was done. And we had to accommodate all of that in building this feature. If you want to know more about how the transcript feature was worked in the O.J. Simpson documentary, I suggest you talk with Patrick. He actually used it. We just created it. Greg did most of the work. It mostly happened between Greg and Patrick. I get to demo it, but I didn't get to use it. So that's Lumberjack, where we take real-time keywording during the shoot, and we make that into keyword ranges and keyword collections inside Final Cut Pro 10, and select string out so that you can have a lot more time to be creative and do the job that you're paid for. And it's only $9.99 a month. And that's everything. You get the iOS application, you get the desktop logging application. This is how we make connect the two. It's all connected with time of day, because we have time of day in the camera and we know what time it is when we click these buttons on and off. And that's the simple genius of it. There's no complicated time code to deal with. There's no synchronizing anything. It just works. I'm happy to take any questions, or otherwise I think we've wrapped up the day. Nobody has any questions?
One in the back row.
Philip, how does it link to the transcripts? When you get your transcript done, do you have to request a special designation for each? Do you start at the beginning time code of the clip?
Yes. You start at 0? Yes. Whatever you throw at it, it will work with. We haven't yet found a transcript format that we won't work with, and if we do, it will work with it 2 days later. And I'm giving Greg time to have lunch. Yeah. Did that answer the question satisfactorily? Yeah. There's no particular format you have to ask for, no text format. Sometimes the speaker is on a line by itself, sometimes it's in capitals on the first words of the actual transcript. We recognize all that. Stuff that's really easy to recognize as a human being is really hard to teach a computer how to do.
Anything else?
No?
No, far back.
Here, just for the camera.
I've got a general keywording
Okay.
question that might also apply to this. Is there a way to get keyword information working across libraries and across for ongoing documentary series? When you're going to have to reference, maybe 5 years worth of footage that's been shot, and for going back and referencing something that might have been in a show in year 1, and you're now in year 5. Is there any way to get keywording working so that you can get back to that without, obviously it's in a different library, it's in a different project.
Well, for a start, I wouldn't put it in a different library. A different event within the library that was the project library. I think that's probably the biggest change I would make to that.
That's going to be the hugest library.
Oh, yeah, Serena?
Talk about backlogging too. Who's doing documentaries?
Yeah.
Talk about backlogging, because that helps with the keywording on old media that hasn't been logged.
But this is what you're talking about is material that has been logged contemporaneously. Yeah, it really has to be in the one library for that to work. And if you want to go outside that, then what you need to do is really look at asset management system, media asset management systems, which will take the keywords from Final Cut into the asset management system. You would then search across all of the assets that you have for those keywords and then bring some sort of import back into Final Cut that has the keyword ranges from all of the material. In the Lumberjack case, as well as doing those story string outs when we first pass it through the Lumberyard application, which is what's on screen at the moment. And in case you didn't work it out, it's called Lumberjack because a lumberjack is a logger. Okay, I should have pointed that up front, shouldn't I? But what we do is the Lumberyard application can also do string outs across the whole project. So from multiple events, you can send a library or selected events back to Lumberyard and do those string outs based on the keywords over all of the material you sent, whether that's keywords that have been generated by Lumberjack or keywords that you've added in Final Cut 10 afterwards.
By the way, Leo just suggested that Library Manager, who doesn't do exactly that, but it might be part of your workflow.
Yeah, Library Manager is an excellent tool. I'm glad somebody did a really sophisticated replacement for Event Manager 10, and I was not sorry to see it go.
I was curious, are there any plans to add other user-generated metadata into the application?
In what way?
Like best take, other sorts of onset logging, things that wouldn't necessarily fall into a keyword per se.
There is nothing that can't fall into our keyword.
Well, I like to use custom metadata tags frequently.
Well, every keyword is a custom tag, a custom metadata tag. I should point out that as Sam said in the introduction, this is for reality and documentary. If you're looking at scripted, you already have a lot of really good solutions out there, Movie Slate being one of them that comes to mind immediately. We really focus this on non-scripted, so you don't know if the take is good or bad until it's later. What we do support, though, of course, is favorite and reject. So if all you want to do at the end of the shoot is the points where somebody said Final Cut 10 was faster from all today, so every time we say Final Cut 10 is faster, we just do a 15-second back time favorite, and it's logged a favorite range for the last 15 seconds. And so all of those favorites, then you can do a favorites string out, and just have a select that all those selects that you've hit favorite for the day will be in a timeline ready for you to start work on. So if you're doing an event. And you have to prepare an overnight edit for tomorrow morning of all the highlights of day one. If you just simply create an event that anyone can log a favorite to, just put it up on the board with a login, and everyone, when they think something's great, they hit a favorite. We concatenate all of those together and create a string out of everybody's favorites from the day. So we do support favorites and rejects, but we're not really focused on scene shot take. I do have a way to make that work, but we haven't started implementing it yet. Yeah.
I'm working on a project now, and the assistant editor made very lengthy marker text, like describing what happens in each shot.
Yeah.
And we're using Producer's Best Friend, where we can export the marker text. But is there anything that will export this kind of lengthy marker text that we have to like a Word file or something? I know it comes out in an Excel sheet, but the marker text is so long it doesn't fit into the cell.
You can open the cell wider.
I mean, I maxed it out.
Oh,
I mean, this guy really went to town on the marker text.
Well, I mean, it's you can actually export CSV, comma separated variable, out of numbers or out of Excel, and that's then a text file that will come into any text editor.
Yeah, but I did that, but it comes out so whacked out.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Where it's got, has all these words in there, and I just thought if there was something...
It might be good to suggest to your assistant that brevity is the soul of wit.
Yeah, yeah, I'd use that quote actually. But it would be great if you had a feature just to go to a Word file. You know what I mean, or something where you could just print that out and hang it up, or you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like But I was just thought there might be. Well, I'll keep playing around with it though.
All right, yeah.
But thank you.
Obviously, everyone knows everything about Lumberjack now.
Phil, can you use this program for project to project?
Oh yeah. I mean, the $9.99 a month gives you unlimited access to everything that is Lumberjack. So unlimited projects at the same time. You can run parallel events on the same. If you want to have multiple cameras, you want to log differently, you can log them to different events at the same time. You can have different people logging the same event for a combined effect. You get access to all of the desktop apps that go with it, which is the Lumberyard processing app, because a lumberyard is where logs get processed. Once you go with a thing, you've got to commit to it. We also have, as Serena reminded me, we have a backlogger application that will allow you to log footage that's already been shot. It's a real-time logger, but a real-time on playback of a video file. And we're working on an enhanced version of that will allow you to stop and start and go back. Currently, it's a real-time goes forward in real world consistently and at a fairly solid, consistent rate. So. We actually, in the new backlogger, you'll be able to go backwards and forwards and trim your keyword ranges. I always said that Final Cut was behind backlogger. I always said that Final Cut was the best logger of any NLE, and it is. But to log a keyword range in Final Cut Pro 10 takes you 9 mouse clicks or keyboard actions. In backlogger, it takes you exactly 2. Click it on and click it off. So even logging after the fact is much faster within the Lumberjack system. Plus you get then all the advantages of doing string outs and lower thirds automation and all of that. So it gives you a very good basic start.
All right.
And all you have to do if you want to try it out is you just go to lumberjacksystem.com, sign up, but don't pay for anything, and send me an email saying you want a month's trial. And if you forget what to do, just send me an email, philip@lumberjacksystem.com. And we'll be. That just reminds me, we do the other side of the business. Greg and I are also intelligent assistance software. So we do Sync and Link and those other tools you've heard mentioned today. I just thought I'd like to throw out there that 10 to CC, as we now call it, is an excellent tool from going from Final Cut 10 to After Effects, to Audition, or to Premiere Pro. Automatic Duck does a very good specialized job just to After Effects for 4 times the price. Or you can use the multitasker that goes everywhere for $50.
And does anyone have any questions for Philip before we close the show? I may have
Nope,
any.
I think we've got it.
Got it? All right, well, thank you guys for coming out to the first ever. Was this worthwhile for you guys? Did you have a good time? Yeah. Awesome. So we should do another one, basically? Yep. Yeah. All right, cool. Please, if you guys have thoughts about how we can do this better, any ideas, go to the bottom of FCPExchange.com and feedback, any ideas. If there's particular presenters you would love to see, let us know. We want to do this and continue to do this better, and please stay involved. If you are working as a Final Cut 10 editor in and around Los Angeles and you're actually booking work and doing stuff, please drop me an email, and I'm going to put you on the database because a lot of people ask, and it's usually the same 5 people I always recommend. So basically, we'd love more. We're trying to build a community out here in Los Angeles, and the bottom line is, like, this stuff is kind of cool, and we would love to see more people using it. And so check it out, FCP Exchange. Next one's in January. And if you guys need integration, consultation, etc., check out FCPWORKS.com. And if you need some shared storage, come see me at LumaForge. So have a great weekend, and hang around afterwards, say hi, and come meet some people.